Now, there are so many issues to tackle when it comes to the problem of insecurity in Nigeria that in recent months the National Assembly as well as security analysts have asked President Buhari to declare a state of emergency. Depending on the part of the country you're in, security forces might be facing jihadists, insurgents, bandits, kidnappers, and groups calling for secession. Hundreds of people have been killed this month alone and hundreds more in the preceding months. And now it's emerged in a new security report released by the respected West African risk management and intelligence security firm Beacon Consulting that insecurity is not only spreading across Nigeria. For the first time, the number of incidents in the south has exceeded those in the north by several percentage points, driven by a growing number of attacks by a motley of armed groups either involved in kidnappings, political violence, jailbreaks, armed conflict, attacks on security forces, violent reactions against the continued detention of separatist leaders, election-related criminality, and of course farmer-herder clashes. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by one of the authors of that report, the CEO of the West African risk management and intelligence security firm Beacon Consulting, Dr. Kabiru Adamu. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, Charles.
A rather startling report you released there, a bit of a wake-up call. Just break down that report for us and give us the main takeaways.
Thank you, Charles, once again. The revealing kind of trend in that report was a shift of incidences from the northern half of the country to the southern half of the country, where, for instance, between the southwest and the southeast, we saw each of them recording 22% of the totality of the incidents that we recorded for the month of October. And then 19% by the northwest and north central. Now, compared to the previous month, it was the north central and the northwest that had almost about 60-something%. Then the southeast as well as the southwest having the list of occurrences. But also, interestingly, is the fact that despite this shift, the number of killings in the north remained at the previous level that we were recording. So less incidents in the north, but it appears the threat factors, and in this instance specifically the bandits, were more ferocious. Now, we could not tie the reasons why they became more deadly, but it appears, for instance, that in Katsina, as an example, Zamfara, where, as you know, the states there had implemented the extraordinary measures that affected communications, that had blocked the ability of these groups to operate. So that seemed to have angered them, and the reaction will be more killing. And then we've also noticed a shift in Sokoto State, where more incidences were recorded, and the ferocity and the deadliness of the incidences were also glaringly clear in Sokoto State. So in a nutshell, that was more or less. Political violence too increased. Initially, the reason was associated with the off-cycle election in Anambra State. But then we also saw associated with the congresses, especially the consequence of the congresses, where in places like Kano and several other states, you now have factions in the two dominant political parties, the People's Democratic Party and the APC. There were several associated violence with those type of political activities.
And we tend to see, I mean, when we think of violence generally, you tend to think of just the, the big ones, the jihadists, the, bandits, farmer-herder clashes, that sort of thing. But there are, what you do is to look at all these different incidents of insecurity, and that includes political insecurity, which of course is a big issue in southern Nigeria.
Exactly, and it's going to increase as we get closer to the 2023 elections. But for southern Nigeria, what was really kind of very revealing was the increase in criminality. We saw the jailbreak in Oyo State, attacks on financial institutions, and then abduction. We saw almost a 56% increase in abduction in southwest of Nigeria in the month of October. Anecdotal reasons have been given for this. It's end of year, people want more money to celebrate the festivity at the end of year. There are also suggestions that if security forces may have deployed to the southeast and the northern half of the country, and so there are gaps within the security infrastructure within some parts of the southwest, allowing in places like Ondo, as an example, and parts of Ekiti State, where we saw an increase in criminality. The good thing is that the report revealed in clear terms the threat factors that are dominant in each of these states, as well as geopolitical zones. And I am hoping that perhaps the security agencies, with that type of eagle eye view of this, would be able to deploy more adequately to cater for the specific types of threat in those locations.
But is it fair to say that in the south, the insecurity may be more sort of rampant, in the sense that they're much smaller incidents, but they're more numerous, is the word I was looking for. Whereas in the north, you have fewer incidents but bigger developments, and therefore that's why you've got this higher body count, if you like.
Part of the reason may seem this spread. You've described it as numerous, but part of the reason again may be the gaps that the security architecture has created. Right. If we're looking at in terms of the ease of dealing with the issues, I would say it's easier to deal with the issues in the southwest. These are criminal issues. If we strengthen the administration of criminal justice system, just law enforcement, then you'd be able to deal with it. Rather, in the north, on the other hand, these are organized groups that are challenging the authority of the state. In the case of Sokoto, as an example, they attacked 4 p.m., held that particular town called Goronyo for almost 4 hours. And they were exchanging gunfire with the few security elements that were in that location. So right. Stronger will, more organized than what we're seeing in the southwest.
But I mean, we're seeing a lot of factions, like as you mentioned, political parties and so on, the factional fighting and so on across the country. So it is fair to assume that in every part of the country it's likely to get worse as we get closer to 2023.
So that depends on what the political actors do.
Right.
Like we've seen in Anambra State, if there is a will, then the situation can be normalized. And we saw that the prediction before the Anambra elections was that it's going to be violent. But the steps that were taken by all the actors, and I mean all, we saw the result.
Yes.
Everything calmed down.
It was generally peaceful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So even this, the outcome of this trend analysis that we've done, and like we've indicated in our advisory, if the right steps are taken, then this can be managed. However, if things are left the way they are at the moment, then the likelihood of an increase, just like you've indicated, especially as the political actors gear up for 2023, we're likely to see. And this is instrumental. I think the president actually hinted, President Buhari, at this when he said political actors are weaponizing violence in an attempt to achieve their objectives. I think it's instrumental that this is something to look at. It's something to take into consideration as we go into 2023.
Right. What about places like the South and North Central and places? Because I mean, you've looked at the Northeast, Northwest, Southeast, Southwest.
So let's start with North Central. North Central is not very different from the Northwest. Almost the same issues that are affecting the North West are affecting North Central. Banditry is a huge issue in the North Central. Farmer-herder violence is a huge issue. Violent criminality is also a huge issue. Militias that have been armed sometimes by different interest groups. In the case of the farmer-herder violence, militias have been armed by either the farmers or the herders. And then very worrisome too, the institutionalization of violence by certain communities in an attempt to achieve their objectives plays a huge factor in the violence in the North Central. Communities that have been fighting each other for a long period over land or other economic resources have, perhaps because of lack of confidence in government security agencies, have institutionalized violence as a means to protect themselves and to achieve their.
But in terms of the percentages, it's a lot less than what we're seeing.
So for the North Central, it's 22%, just like Northwest.
Right.
However, for the South, which remarkably in October has the lowest incidents, it's more or less militancy, a little bit of criminality and gang violence. The organized crimes that we're seeing in other parts of the country, for some reasons there has been a reduction. Piracy is still a huge issue, but we're not recording that in the South. That's more in terms of waterways and all that. But those are factors that are quite active in the South.
So, I mean, you release these reports every month, don't you? I mean, they're very important because, I mean, it gives people, it's a risk assessment of what's going on in Nigeria, and a lot of embassies and all that sort of thing, and Nigerian different security organizations, official security organizations tend to look at them. What's the overall picture then about insecurity in Nigeria, your latest report? Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? Is it unchanged largely?
Charles, 600 plus people dying in any country is worrisome. So I mean, I don't want to kid about that. I would like to reach a situation where we record anything less than 0 if it's possible. But where we are, 600 people, and like we've indicated in our report, this is indicative, it's not definitive. It's very likely that more people have died beyond the 600 that we recorded. But if we're looking at a comparative analysis of month-to-month comparative analysis, we've been at this medium of 600 plus for about 4 months now. So clearly, there is something the government is doing that is working. The month that we recorded the highest for this year was June, where we recorded 1,000 plus, about 1,031, thereabout. And since then, the figure dropped to 61. Now we've tried to identify what specifically has the government been doing, and it's kinetic force. But then we also mentioned in the report that that kinetic force is not sustainable. It's very expensive. It's also reducing the trust between the people and the security forces. And so what do you do? And that's why we've advised, for instance, that the governors have a huge role to play in this regard. The level of coordination between the federal and state government in a lot of places is not very strong, unfortunately.
Very interesting. Dr. Kabiru Adamu, CEO of Beacon Consulting, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having me.